What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello, Buffer Timers, and welcome to a very special episode. It is episode 100 of this show. We've been doing this for 2.5 full years. Me and Scott here did the first episode of the show before it was actually even named Buffer Time on Christmas Eve 2022, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And then Robbie was actually down here, is actually the first person to join Buffer Time, though, as an idea. It was you and I were the first ones to come up with it, and then Scott, and then I think Vanessa's the next, or no, actually,
No.
I think Dell is the next person in after that. So yeah, we've picked up some wonderful people along the way, and here's, like this wonderful Brady Bunch square we've got going on. So before we all tell you why we love Star Trek and what it means to us, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I am Scott from Opinions No One Cares About.
Hi, I'm Jel. Yep, that one.
My name's Gannon from a channel by the same name.
My name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek. Glad to be here.
I'm Cousin Oliver, a.k.a. Josh and or Windgrace.
Oh.
I'm Robbie.
Whoever.
Okay. I'm Robbie Sherman of Conversations with Robbie Sherman. Thank you all so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Shereese from The Sci-Fi Savage, which you can find on YouTube and all the social media channels.
And I'm Ren from Ren Rants. You can also find me on YouTube.
Yeah, I guess I should have explained that we're going to stank it because we've never had 9 people on screen before.
But now we can do this.
Basically all of us. This is great. And now that you've seen our normal format just filled out better, let's go to a different one. Because as we each answer these questions, this is going to be less adversarial and tearing something apart and just building each other up. So first question, I want to start with Vanessa, and I'll just kind of go around after that and call you. When you're done with something, just say next or done. And then if anybody else wants to chime in off what you said, that would be the opportunity to do that. So, first question for everybody. What got you into Star Trek? What was your starting point?
So, I had been raised with somebody that was into Star Trek, my uncle in particular. However, the person who actually got me into it was my former partner, Drea. She introduced me to, hello, everybody. Hello, Norman. Hello. She introduced me to, she actually showed me The Outcast, I think was my first full introduction to TNG. And that's when it really stuck with me. And then because it was 2016, I was looking for something that gave me hope, and Star Trek gave me hope. So I went through the entire thing, stem to stern, Enterprise to Discovery and beyond, all of it. So, yeah. And when I started my channel, it was because I was watching a carefully curated selection of episodes, and the ones that I skipped were what my channel came from. So that's what got me into it.
You didn't say the code word.
I just assumed you were done there.
Yes, you're good. So, timing's perfect. Yeah.
If nobody else has anything else to say on that, go ahead, Josh.
So this one's a little tough for me because I guess you could say I didn't really have an origin story per se. Like I was born as TNG was premiering. I was just kind of raised in it, so I don't have any recollections of a time before Star Trek. I guess you could say I didn't really choose it. It was just bred into me. Is that a way to describe it? I don't know. But I do recall certain things like, growing up as TNG was airing and then, choosing to continue watching Voyager, and Enterprise was like my first real, I'm going to decide to watch this on my own, not as a family thing. Other specific instances I remember is we had a very old, like 1970s knob wood panel TV that my parents kept in their bedroom, which the only thing we could get on it with the antenna was like, I think it was CBS, old TOS reruns. So like that was the special secret TOS room, because aside from that, there wasn't much to watch on that TV. So it was kind of like a fun adventure. And then I remember seeing the TOS movies at my grandparents' house. They had one of those little portable TVs, which don't really work anymore. That's like a 4-inch screen, but you can just kind of turn the dial and maybe pick something up. I found the Search for Spock doing that. So it's just always been sort of a part of my life and kind of what I always go back to when I need comfort or when I want to see a vision of where hopefully we could go. Fingers crossed, not the mirror universe. Just a lot of ancillary stuff too. Like when I was in high school and I was big into reading again, I'd get into the beta canon novels and stuff just to add some more spice to my life. And then we had the dark times, which seemed a lot longer to me when I was younger than looking back now. Those 4 years between the end of Enterprise and 2009 felt like a decade back then. But there's been ups and downs, but it's good to see that the show is still thriving all these years later. Bananas Foster.
I guess I just want to say in between here, you were talking about watching it on like an old little portable TV. I used to watch it or listen to it in the summer off one of those like TV radios where you can just pick up the radio part. And all summer I would listen to like TNG, whatever the reruns were at the time. Go ahead, Ren.
Okay. Well, I feel like my Star Trek origin story is something I never shut up about it because it's so cute and wholesome, and it's pretty much my dad and my mom a little. She also loves Trek, but we had all of TNG on DVD, and I remember one night I like snuck into the living room when I was supposed to be in bed and like watched Worf get crushed by containers. But I found the whole world like so fascinating, so I asked my parents if I could watch it. And so then the ritual began where pretty much every night I would watch at least one episode of Star Trek with my dad and then eventually my little brother. We obviously started with TNG, and then eventually my dad bought the sketchiest Voyager DVD set off of eBay. All of the episode titles were in Chinese, so we had to like just kind of guess where we were at last on the list to try to get to the next episode. But we managed to make it work. We did see all of Voyager that way, and then eventually it all came to streaming. I used to also watch VHS episodes of TOS with my best friend. We'd make like a little blanket fort in the living room and watch it, and it was great. Star Trek honestly will just always feel like home to me. It makes me so happy.
What a good episode to start off with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Shereese.
Well, similar to some of you and a lot of people who are in the chat, I'm sure it was my parents. Mostly for me, it was my mom. And I feel like Star Trek was kind of like an intro drug into sci-fi. So I'm so grateful for it. But my mom was trying to get me to watch TOS. And she was like, come on, you'll love it. And I was like, I refuse to watch any old show ever. So she was like, okay, TNG just came out. Watch this. I think you'll like it. And I totally fell in love, which is so funny to me because it wasn't until I was reviewing this show for the TNG podcast that I realized that season 1 was so season 1, and I was like, how could a little kid love this? Like, what in this was just like, oh, I got to get more, because I was like 6 or something. What about this was like, yeah, give me more of this? I think it was just that the whole idea of space travel and meeting aliens and going on adventures and all of that was so magical to me. It was so different from Power Rangers and Darkwing Duck and all the shows I normally watched in my day, that it just, I don't know, it was just super inspirational. And it was like, wow, this is a whole nother world. So I think, especially being so little, it was much less about good storylines, good character development, good plots, or any of that stuff. It was just like, whoa, look, these aliens can shoot electricity from their fingertips. You know, it was just stuff that I'd never seen before. And I'm really, really grateful to my mom for getting me into Trek, for my parents for getting me into sci-fi in general. And I remember as a kid, I would ask my mom in-universe questions, and she always answered in-universe. Like, she never said, that's fake, it's not real, it's just TV. If I asked some random question like, how can so-and-so read minds? She'd be like, oh, it's because their species are mind readers. Like, she would just totally, like, not that flat and just be like, oh, this is exactly what the answer is in-universe for any movie ever. And it also has a special place in my heart for that reason, that movies and TV is like a real connection point for my family. So yeah, it's both my parents, but mostly my mom. And I'm just super grateful to them for introducing me to this whole world. Bingo. That's my done word.
Nadia beat me too. I was going to come out of this by being like, let's get dangerous, Shereese.
Oh, yeah.
You bring up Darkwing Duck.
I have a poster right over there. I can't reach it though.
Oh, that's awesome.
As far as I'm concerned, when there's trouble, you call DW.
Suck gas.
This is true. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Robbie.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Star Trek should be a founding cornerstone of any reputable sci-fi nerd's vocabulary on some level. And I mean, from the very moment I was a young man, my dad was watching it. I mean, I was probably seeing Star Trek like when I was a real little like baby and not knowing what was going on, because it's that much of a fixture of my life. So it's kind of, there's not really just one thing that makes me love Star Trek. It's just sort of how do I put this? Like, I don't want to use the term grooming because that sounds terrible, but I've been over my years I have been bred to kind of just love Star Trek no matter what. And there's different things that show up over the years. Like when you're younger, you want the sci-fi action of it. That's a big thing to get into. But then you realize like the meat of the show is not just like action set pieces, and it has genuine concerns that in the time it was coming out in have societal effects that are larger than most TV shows ever accomplish. I mean, it's probably one of the only TV shows that has ever mattered. Like, as far as the development of the world and how we view science and how the world comes together, it's probably one of the only TV shows that ever mattered. I think it's a fun thing too if you're a younger person, because it's one of the only TV shows that deals with sexuality on a moderately mature level. There's fan service couched in with your, moral lessons about using your holodeck too often, and that's fun. I mean, that probably helped ease in a little bit of the lessons when I was younger. So, yeah. I mean, it's just always there. It's always been there. It's always been on TV. And as I became more acquainted with sci-fi lore, sci-fi archetypes and things, it's very pleasing to see Star Trek sometimes helping define those, sometimes being defined by other cultural entities in sci-fi. That's fascinating. Star Trek's just one of the only things in my life that I can genuinely look at as beautiful and mattering.
I love that. That's like the longest stretch of super positive commentary from you ever, Robbie. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I know you're going to turn into a big joke, but I just want to say it was beautiful before you turn into a big joke.
You've never heard Robbie talk about Felix the cat.
I have not.
Oh,
that's true.
No.
Or Batman.
Or Batman.
He's got a lot of positive stuff
or
to say.
Catman. What?
Catman's cool too. Not the Fairly Odd Parents one though, because fuck that guy. Y'all know which one I'm talking about.
Of course we do. Yeah, I've got kind of a similar experience to Shereese. I started watching TNG when I was like 6. Got into it when I was like 7 or 8, really, truly. I remember watching seasons like the end of season 4 through as in its first run. Used to watch it with my uncle who liked it, and I guess that kind of got me into it, but it's just I was always into like science and NASA and stuff back in the day, and so I guess Star Trek really just stuck with me in that way. And then I actually, like, towards the end of high school, I didn't even finish watching Voyager, even though like I had kept up with everything until then. And I didn't see that until I was well into an adulthood. Same thing with Enterprise. Like, I started watching the first couple of seasons of it, and or the first season of it, and I couldn't get into it at first. I do like it now, and I am very glad that I gave it another chance. Just like DS9, when that came out when I was like, what was it, like 7 or 8? I guess it was 8. I didn't like it. I really didn't. And at that time I would have said Move Along Home is the best episode of DS9. But obviously there is much better today, even within that season, for sure.
But that is what a 7-year-old would say was the best episode. That totally
I still
tracks.
think it's a good episode.
But I mean, there were deep episodes of like TNG that I liked as a kid, but that one, it just stuck with me from DS9 until I like saw it all the way through as an adult, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, that's pretty much my beginnings. I've been in this for a really long time, and I'm in it for the long haul. Give me Academy. I don't care. I want another 10 seasons of Prodigy. That's a crime that we lost Prodigy.
I don't know about
honestly.
10 seasons with 20 episodes a season, but yeah. Maybe 2 more seasons with 10 episodes each would be good.
Nah, give them to
That'd
me.
be too good.
Prodigy party at my house.
Oh, I'm coming.
I'm done with these 10 episode seasons. Give me 20 episodes.
I'll bring the beer.
Back.
Can I get 6 seasons in a movie for Lower Decks? Oh, that'd be so sweet.
No, 6 seasons in a moopsie.
6 seasons and a moopsie.
Oh, my turn.
It's your turn.
Okay, so my story is actually relatively similar to Dustin's. I don't remember which one came first, whether it was watching early TNG with my mom, or the time I'm going to say in like early 1992, when I was in Maine visiting my uncle at his apartment because he and my aunt had just divorced. And I went with him and my cousin to go see a movie, and it was Undiscovered Country. And as Star Trek movies go, that's a pretty good one to see for the first time in the theater. But yeah, I got back home. I remember watching TNG up until like probably around the end of its run. I didn't catch DS9 or Voyager or like anything going forward until way later. I know my mom was a fan because we had a box set of the first 6 movies, and then an extra one for Generations. And it was one of these old ones where if you had them in order, the sides of the individual sleeves made a picture. And then weirdly enough, the other side of it would make another picture, but they had to be out of order. That never made sense to me. But it cooled off for a long time after that, until right around the time I met my ex-wife, actually, because her mom was a big Trekkie, who unfortunately I never met because she passed away the year before we met. But I have just her almost entire collection of Star Trek books now. And I'm still talking to her dad about trying to get some of the old Hallmark ornaments that he has for like the Christmas tree. Because I'm pretty sure to this day, this noises still work. And I would absolutely love to be able to push a button on an ornament and hear Worf say, "I wish you an honorable holiday." Kapla.
That sounds like the best
From
ornament
cable
ever.
to streaming, I signed up for whatever we're calling Paramount Plus at the time, CBS All Access, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And had to binge like 2 seasons of Discovery in like a week. I don't recommend that. Oh yeah, they're really great. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, seriously. Like the D, the E, a runabout. There's a Romulan bird of prey or a Romulan warbird in there. I need those ornaments. But pretty much since then, Star Trek has been kind of constant. Like, I almost didn't realize it, but like when I started doing this channel, my first and last long form videos, because I've been doing shorts lately, are about Star Trek, and there's like 3 more sprinkled in there. And I wasn't even planning that. It's just that I happened to notice something that I thought was significant about 2 of the different movies and how similar they were, and I made that, you know, the topic of my first video. And then on the last one, I railed against Voyager for a while. But yeah, I have to say it has been going on since I was at least 9 years old. Kirk out.
Before you go, Del, I just want to throw in how much, we've spent an awful lot of money on the modern Hallmark ornaments. We spend several $100s every year, and we don't even get them all. There's always more that's like, yep, that's not worth it. This year, there's this gigantic Borg cube with like that you can hang the miniatures on that we like had accidentally gotten an extra refit from the Motion Picture Enterprise. And there's like one that comes with, and the D comes with it, so it's like it tractors it with the big Borg cube. Anyway, it's not even like an ornament for a tree. It's like a base. You like put it on something, and then you hang your little minis off of it, like the Federation ships or whoever are fighting the Borg. Go ahead, Del.
Hi, I had the Galileo, and I'm pretty sure I still do. When you pressed its sides, I think Spock said something. Anyway. There has never been a time in my life where Star Trek was not involved. Although the first movie I ever saw in a theater as a baby was Star Wars, but you can forgive me for that. TNG came out when I was in high school, so I was significantly older than most of you at the time. But my father was such a Star Trek fan that literally from birth, most of my house was covered in Star Trek novels. And it was my father's favorite thing was to lay on the couch facing away from the television while old Star Trek was on the TV. And if you tried to change the channel, even if he was asleep, he'd be like, I'm listening to that. He was really worried that TNG was going to suck. So he made it like a big family event. And that's what happened to TNG. Like, we didn't have a lot of big family events in my house, but pizza on TNG night was the thing. DS9 was rough for me because at that time I was going to college. Like, so watching a serialized plot was not really in the cards for me at the time. But my brother kept telling me it was really, really good and I should sit down and watch it one day. But I loved Voyager. I'm like a big fan of Enterprise from season 3 on. Like the first 2 seasons are fun, but when the Xindi show up, and I've just never seen a Star Trek like show I didn't like. So it's always been this random constant. It's still a way that my family can, like right now I'm spending a lot of time with my sister and we bring up Star Trek in every conversation at some point in time. So it really is sort of the gel to what made my family work together for so long. And I'm always here for the camp and the weird and the Spock's brain of it all. Like, that's really what keeps me in it now. Like, I'll put up with like a, I don't know, best of both worlds, as long as you give me like a Data's Day at some point. Which is sad because currently with the 10 episode seasons, they don't have time unless you're Strange New Worlds. So that's sort of how I got into Trek and what Trek means to me now. I'm allergic to bananas, Foster.
All right. Big G, Gannon, what do you got?
Yeah, so I wasn't exposed to Star Trek until I was 18. I was always really into sci-fi, and I was obsessed with Star Wars and Lego Star Wars growing up. And when I was in high school, basically when you're a senior, your objective is to be at school as little as possible and you just take all the easy electives because senior year's fake. You want to like leave high school at that point. And so I took a sci-fi class as an elective, and Mr. Meeks, I don't know if it's smart to say his name online. Yeah, this guy's an asshole. Mr. Meeks is an asshole. He's the guy that you like respect him for a handful of things, but he's also just like can't help but by being like an asshole at least once a week. This class was awesome though. We literally sat in the class and we watched sci-fi. Like we literally just watched movies and episodes of stuff. And the first 3 episodes of Star Trek I ever watched were first one I ever watched was Devil in the Dark, and that's what got me hooked because I love the TOS so much. I love Captain Kirk so much. I was hooked the moment that they showed me that episode. I was like, I need to see more. This shit is so funny. I love it. I think Star Trek's genuinely funny, by the way, in all eras. Every single one, it's actually like manages to be funny. And the other 2 episodes I watched after that, both in class, were Caretaker, believe it or not, and A Measure of a Man, because I think he wanted to show us like a really iconic one. And yeah, I binged the next 2 seasons, or I binged all 3 seasons of TOS after that, and I did my final project for that elective on Star Trek. I made a video about it for my YouTube channel, and I think that's what inspired me to cover a lot more Star Trek on YouTube. And I think the last thing I will say is that after I watched all 3 seasons, I saw that William Shatner was coming to town to do a showing of The Wrath of Khan, and I was like, Mom, I need to go meet William Shatner. He's Captain Kirk, and I love Captain Kirk. I was obsessed with Captain Kirk at the time, and I went and I saw the movie. He did a little, thing where he talked to the crowd, and then I got a picture with him. I was so happy. And then when I went to go tell my teacher about it, it was during lunch period, and I walked upstairs. You're not supposed to be upstairs during lunch period. And he's like, what are you doing up here? Because he's an asshole. And I was like so excited to tell him about meeting Captain Kirk. And I showed him the pictures of me with William Shatner. And yeah, that's my origin story.
What was his reaction?
Well, he was cool about it after he realized I was just there to talk to him. But yeah, he thought it was cool. But again, he's kind of an asshole, so you never really get like the reaction that you want out of him. Like, oh man, that's so cool. I wanted him to be like, oh, that's so cool. You met Captain Kirk at the time. But yeah.
Still a good story.
I would love to see data on younger folks like you that have gotten into it and have started with TOS versus like some of us that are in our 40s or thereabouts that started in the TNG era. And then it's like, yeah, TOS is this thing that, yeah, okay, it exists. It started it fine, whatever. I've gained more respect for it as time has gone on. But definitely that was how I felt about it back then. I'd only seen a few episodes back in the 90s of it. And Trouble with Tribbles was the only one I liked.
I think that Captain Kirk, just like Eddie Murphy said, is possibly the coolest white man to ever exist. Like, he's so cool.
I'm impressed that you binged it. I'm not gonna lie. I like TOS, but I have to admit, for me, it's like a small doses thing. Like I'll watch a couple episodes here and there, but when I actually sit down to binge it, I'm like, wow, this was made in the 60s.
Yeah. You really have to put your suspension of disbelief like on hold for some of it and just deal with the like sappy, weird special effects and things that they tried to do.
I started with Enterprise and then like went in timeline order. So started with Enterprise and then went TOS.
Wow.
So it was like, I have a deep love for it as well. Like I've watched the entire thing. I think it's its own, it's like David S. Pumpkins. It's its own thing. And I love the theatricality of it. You can see the sort of young television isms about it. So you can see like the theater acting on television kind of thing. I love it personally.
All right, let's go with our second question. Shereese, what is your favorite episode of Star Trek or favorite episodes if you can't pick one, because I know there's a lot of people here. They're like, I can't pick one. One? Not in Star Trek.
Well, I hoped you would go to me last because I have so many favorites that I could be like, everybody's already said all of mine. But you went
Yeah, if
first, so I'm gonna start. Okay, so I picked 3 for TNG and 3 for Voyager. So because I could not pick a favorite. So I have the next phase from TNG because I love, like, that to me is like quintessential Trek, right? There's time shifting and bad guy aliens and laser battles, and I mean it's perfection. And I love seeing Data process his friendship with Geordi and death and all of that. The second episode is Timescape, which is just like such a good episode. And that's the one where everything's like frozen in time. And Picard and crew come on the runabout and they're like, what's going on? Oh my gosh, the Enterprise is being attacked. And then it's not at all what they thought. Love that. And then Ship in a Bottle, where we get to see Moriarty part 2. This is the idea of a sentient hologram, which is so interesting. And I feel like without this and without the elementary Dear Data, we wouldn't have the Doctor in Voyager. And I freaking love the Doctor. So I'm just so grateful for the Sherlock Holmes crossover and the idea of a sentient hologram. And then for Voyager, the first one is The Chute. That's the one when Tom and Harry are in prison and there's a device in their head driving them mad. I love the bromance between Tom and Harry. Like that's friendship goals, just like Geordi and Data. And every time I watch that episode, it makes me cry at the end when Harry's just like, I'm so sorry, I almost beat you to death with a pipe, Tom. And Tom is like, I don't remember that. I remember you saying, no one touches this man. He's my friend. And that, it always just like makes me cry. I love it. Okay, the second one I love from Voyager is Worst Case Scenario. That's another holodeck one where Seska comes back, even though she's been dead for years. And she tries to get rid of Tuvok and Tom. Fun time had by all. And then the last one is Equinox, which is the other Starfleet crew that got pulled in by the caretaker, but they've done things totally differently. They've been like Prime Directive, Schmime Directive, and they've been eliminating all of these peaceful aliens to use as fuel to get them home faster. And I feel like it's the dark side of what Voyager could have become if Janeway wasn't so like adamant about following the rules when she was adamant about following the rules. So I love seeing that, like, that's like the road not taken and the road you're so glad they didn't take. So I really appreciate that. Okay, bingo.
Robbie?
Okay, the big one I want to get out of the way is the cage. Not simply the menagerie, the cage itself. I love the cage. I love Jeffrey Hunter as Pike. I gotta look up this guy's name just real quick here. The doctor, whatever his name is. I love what a little asshole he is. Yeah, Bryce. Dr. Philip Bryce. John Hoyt is great in that role, and he's just like so old, and he looks like one of the first Doctor Who's. Like he's that old and like finicky with his nose. Like I love it. It's great stuff. I think one of the things that made me fall in love with it was that when I was in my teen years, I was getting into the MST3K, trying to figure out how movies work and trying to figure out how movies should not work. And this is a sterling example of early science fiction effects work and like what they were trying to do with it and what they were thinking sets should be like and what we were trying to like figure out works on a dramatic level between actors. I think The Cage is a fascinating like exercise before we get into the actual Star Trek series. I like Pike as a character in particular too, and I wish we got more of his adventures. And I think it's a little criminal and stuff like the Kelvin verse that we've had Pike taken away from us. So that's a huge thing for me too. That's making The Cage stand up a little better. I know it's creaky, guys. Like I understand how creaky TOS is, but that's a big part of the fun for me too. Because I love the theatricality of it. Like they didn't really know how to act for TV in a way yet. They kind of made this seem natural. It's great stuff. I also wanted to talk about DS9. Because Whispers is a episode that stands out in my head. Like, I don't know why, but like, this thing stood out in my head. Like, the conspiracy of it, Brian thinks the whole crew is against him and what that leads to. That was a big thing for me, I think, when I was a young teen. And I think that helped grasp me onto Star Trek a little better in a way I hadn't been before. I don't want to take up too much time here. We have so many people, but hey, thank you so much.
That's a great pick, Robbie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, great.
You're good. I can actually pick my favorite. Even though I have a distinction, like if you've watched my channel long enough, you know that my professional number one from ranking every episode of Star Trek is In the Pale Moonlight. Because objectively, if I look at it from all angles, it probably is the best episode. What's my favorite episode? TNG's Tapestry. There is just something about mixing A Christmas Carol with It's a Wonderful Life and just bringing Jean-Luc out and Q like doing something truly selfless to try to like kick Picard in the pants and be like, yeah, you see how good you have it? It's such a great setup, and it pulls from Patrick Stewart doing like the one-man stage show of A Christmas Carol, and like he did it on TBS or TNT a couple years after that. It hits all of the cylinders for me. It's got that classic Star Trek, a god tests humans and plays with them and puts them in weird situations thing. So it's got a lot of elements of Star Trek and just a lot of elements of really good, solid writing overall.
Okay, I want not to drag this out too far. I was trying to think if I had like a favorite episode from every series. Apparently not. So just for fun, we'll start in TNG. When it comes to TNG, you get serious stuff like Measure of a Man and The Outcast and The Offspring, which I'm still crying at to this day. But I really love their episodes that mess with time. Your Yesterday's Enterprise, your Cause and Effect, not technically time travel, but parallels. I find it very interesting that all these different versions of Worf from across the infinite multiverse, and yet you never see him wearing science blue. Worf is just never a scientist. You move on to DS9, and most of the ones, like obviously the serious higher ones, In the Pale Moonlight is, yes, objectively the best episode. I'll also give you props for The Visitor and Duet, but I really for some reason get into the ones that center more around the Ferengi. Whether it's the Magnificent Ferengi or Little Green Men, sometimes even body parts. Definitely the Nagus, because who doesn't love Wallace Shawn? And then you mix them together where it's the Ferengi and Sirius, like it's only a paper moon. That is great. I can only think of like one, oddly enough, from Voyager, which is weird because I've been watching it constantly for I don't know how many months. But it was Real Life. Seeing the Doctor with a family and having to lose that family really got me. I can barely, for some reason, I can barely remember an episode from Enterprise, except for ones that I don't really like Vanishing Point. Then, of course, the only title I ever remember from Disco is Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. It was Fly Over Picard. Lower Decks, there are better episodes, but for me, Kayshawn, His Eyes Open is the best episode because it's just a beautiful love letter to TNG. Oh no, that's Strange New World. Prodigy would probably be Time Amuck, and there's something in the second season. I'm never gonna remember the title. When it comes to Strange New Worlds, I was surprisingly into Spock Amuck because I don't usually like body swap movies, but that episode got me. And then, of course, like late entry, Those Old Scientists, just the best freaking crossover. Kirkat.
I just want to throw this out here. I am committed to finding a copy of this or pirating it if I have to. I am going to play this Galdarn game before the end of this year. This is the one where you Robert O'Reilly plays Gowron. There's a ton of people you'd recognize. I've seen video of people playing it, and most of because it's basically just a long one of those video choose your own adventure kind of games. And I know, like, at the beginning, it's just Robert O'Reilly just speaking in Klingon with no subtitles. So it's kind of like early Game of Thrones. And it's just Khaleesi just screaming at people in a language that we have no idea what she's saying. All right, now that I've gone off on this tangent, go ahead, Del. Talk to us about your favorite episode or sods.
So this is going to be a fun game we all play together. It's called Dell Doesn't Know the Title of Episodes. It's just not something that sticks in my brain. So I'm going to tell you about these episodes. And then you're going to be really smart and tell me what the name of the episode is. All right. For TNG, it's the one where the ship keeps exploding and then they go back to the poker game and Crusher starts to realize that they're getting the same cards over and over again. Yep. Okay, good. That's one of them. Number 2 is from Discovery. No. Yes, Discovery. It's the one in the last season with her weird first officer and her going through time, and eventually Stamets is also in that timeline. Okay, good. And then the last one I could think of was Lower Decks with the Umak's Rub Dungeon.
I love that you coined that term. Umak's Rub Dungeon. That is great.
Those are my favorite.
Rock on.
I would also maybe put the Mud episode from Strange New Worlds in there too.
Fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like episodes that repeat themselves over and over again so I can remember the details. Those are the best.
Nice. Go ahead, Gannon.
Okay. I just have a small little list. Scott named some absolute bangers. One of which I'll have to say is Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad is probably a top 5 or top 10 in all of Star Trek. I think it is Discovery's best example of using modern writing. The format they were using. I loved the relationship with Ash Tyler. I really hate that he wasn't explored at all in like Section 31 or in any other season of Discovery. And then I love A Piece of the Action. I love Equinox from Voyager a lot. I love Gamesters of Triskelion was always one of my favorites. And then an episode that actually really impacted me, and you could say it's probably a top 3 episode for me, is It's Only a Paper Moon. That episode deals a lot with exploring mortality, depression, just trying to, like escapism and not trying to deal with your problems. And it's a really great episode. And I'm done.
Nice. Good stuff.
Vanessa.
My first favorite episode comes from TOS, Balance of Terror. I think it's just perfectly paced, perfectly written. It throws you into the action from the get. You get one of my favorite Kirk lines ever about leaving your bigotry in your quarters. It has no place on the bridge. Love that. I think it embodies all of what TOS signifies in one episode. And also Spock's backstory and the relationship with the Romulans and that whole reveal and everything. So there's that one. Another favorite of mine is from Enterprise called Stigma. It has to do with T'Pol contracting Pinar syndrome from mind melding. It's an AIDS allegory. Beautifully done. I wish it was timed a little better in like TNG, but it is what it is. Really wonderfully done. Jolene Blaylock kills it. And from DS9 Beyond, In the Pale Moonlight, which I think is my favorite from that series, but like one that I think really smashes it out of the park is Far Beyond the Stars. I think Star Trek, when it uses alien allegory, it's a little limited. With Far Beyond the Stars, it's direct It's done by the gentleman who plays Cisco, whose name for whatever reason is escaping me at the moment.
Avery Brooks.
Avery
Thank you, Avery Brooks. Thank you. Avery Brooks wrote it and directed it. It is amazing. The breakdown that he has at the end gets to me every single time. I think the highs in Star Trek are many, and so it's so difficult to narrow it down to a single one. But those are the ones that hit me the hardest.
Nice. Those are all solid. Go ahead, Josh.
All right. So, I had originally intended to tackle this differently and just go with something that kind of popped out with a lot of elements that I really liked. But one of the other things that I was kind of going through in my head were, what were the episodes that I watched a lot when I was younger? And obviously part of that was because they were the ones that I had on tape or DVD or whatever. But a lot of them I find happened to be data episodes, whether or not that was intentional or my parents bought me those, I'm not sure. But like Fistful of Datas was there, Thine Own Self, the lovely Mark Twain episode that apparently I can't talk about because nobody else likes Mark Twain on
No
Star Trek
twaining.
except
This
me.
is a no twaining zone.
A no twaining
Time
zone.
Barrow was fantastic. Mark Twain's awful.
Yeah.
I am pro Mark
It's
Twain.
great.
But obviously, you know, a lot of the newer Trek has some good episodes, but they haven't stood the test of time of me living with them for so long. But the one that I guess kind of stuck out to me when I was thinking about it, which I probably wouldn't have chosen before, is Future Imperfect, and that from TNG. And that's just because it has a lot of elements that were kind of like a crossover for TNG. We got to see some things that I like it wasn't a real alternate future, but we got to see the existence of our characters in what was supposed to be a possible future. There were holodeck elements in it. There was a mystery that went above and beyond just the normal mystery with a resolution. It's like, haha, fake out. That actually isn't what happened. We had an alien in it that wasn't actually just a human. Yes, it was humanoid, but he had long fingers and weird eyes. So I'm going to count that as an actual alien. We got to see Riker actually stand up for himself and yell at Jean-Luc, even though it wasn't the real Jean-Luc. But come on, shut your mouth. You can't knock somebody for telling Jean-Luc to shut his mouth and stop talking. And we even get a reference in it to Beyond Belief, even though I don't know if that was intentional or not, which, you know, again, you have to call out Star Trek actors' other projects. Similarly, I just want to point out the Reading Rainbow episode that went behind the scenes of Star Trek. That was one of my favorites too. My second choice would probably be Shades of Grey from TNG because it just has so many other good episodes within it. I'm just kidding.
I really tensed up when you mentioned that episode.
This is clearly not a no judgment zone because there was a lot of judgment coming from me when you said that. But continue.
No, I just like a lot of the aspects that TNG brought to the table, even though as time has gone on, it's probably not my favorite show anymore. That probably goes to Voyager just because that's my comfort show. It doesn't have necessarily the best bangers in it. But if I'm going to go with Voyager and I'm going to pick something people haven't mentioned yet, I'm going to go with Blink of an Eye. It's just such a beautiful episode. I would name a bunch of others that I like, but I don't want to steal from people who haven't gone yet by mentioning a bunch of possibilities. I'll go there. Bananas creamed.
Well, I mean, it's only Ren left, so. And I hope you've got some great ones.
I have many. Okay. So for TNG, it's really hard to pick, and I would probably give you different answers if you ask me next week. But today, I think it's Ensign Ro because I love Ro. I love her, and I also love women making trouble for Riker. It's a lot of fun. I think she brings out some of the hypocrisy and imperialism of Star Trek, and the way her storyline progresses, I think is some of the best writing for a non-main character in all of Trek period. She's amazing, but it all starts there. and I love her. Also, controversial take. I still love Rascals. I loved it as a kid. I still think it's a cute episode. I also like picking a favorite Q episode was really hard, but I went with Deja Q for TNG because like it's interesting seeing Q as a fish out of water, like without his powers, and the way the Enterprise crew, like despite all of his shenanigans, still embraces him. I just love it. It makes me happy. And then for like a darker episode, I really like The Wounded, actually. I just think it's so well paced, and the way that the truth that Maddox is right, the way that unfolds, and the way Picard still chooses like the peaceful diplomatic option, like knowing that Maddox was right. It's such a banger, and the way it develops O'Brien's character and backstory is really solid. And yeah, I like that one. I think it's good. And then obviously like the Outcast and the Offspring are both just you can't not mention them in a favorites list. It's illegal. For Voyager, since Josh, thank goodness, said blink of an eye, I can add a different one to my list, my little list. So I would say I really like Year of Hell, actually. I love the Voyager two-parters in general. I know Year of Hell is kind of like was originally sort of supposed to be like a season-long arc, and I actually really wish they committed to it because it's such a cool idea. But the 2 episodes we get are so well done. Kurtwood Smith is amazing in that episode.
Always.
And it's just got so much going for it, and I love the way it just like pushes the Voyager crew to the brink, and we really like see what it's like for them when it's like really down to the wire like that. One of my other favorites is Living Witness. I like the complexity of sort of this like the way this like historical narrative, written by the winners essentially is undercut by someone who was there showing up, and the way they have to like reckon with that, and how it actually has like a huge like ripple effect out on their society, I think is just really well done. I also love Unimatrix Zero, part 1 and 2. I think that might be my favorite Borg episode in Voyager, but it's really hard to pick because I love the Voyager Borg episodes. But the way it like humanizes all of the drones while they're still trapped in the collective, I think is really interesting. And also the idea that there's like resistance within the collective is really interesting and was a really cool theme to explore. The only thing I wish is that it had like somehow been come back to a little bit more, like maybe worked into like in the finale in like a big way. That would have been super cool, but alas. Okay. I'm the last one, so I'm just going to do it. Going back to TNG real quick, I also love Face of the Enemy. The one where Troy is a member of the Tal Shiar. I think it's fun to see Troy get to do something that doesn't involve her getting like mind raped, honestly. And yeah, I think it's really cool like watching her like pretend to be a member of the Tal Shiar and like boss Romulans around. It's great. The rest of them I'll just go through really fast because I know we're running out of time. For Strange New Worlds, I'm just going to do 2. I love Ad Astra per Aspera. I think that one's just amazing. It's one of my favorite Trek courtroom episodes, and I think it's just really well written. And I love the way the Federation's like bigotry is used against itself in the end, to kind of like point out the hypocrisy. And I love Subspace Rhapsody. I'm so glad we finally got a freaking musical episode. I can't believe it took this many shows to get a musical episode when we have like a board game episode and a Robin Hood episode. Like it took this long for a musical, and I can't believe people were mad about it. For Discovery, I really like the episode where Tilly makes friends with the mycelium or the Jashep. I think that was like New Eden or Point of Light. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't remember which one I actually liked better of the 2, but I just thought that was cool. And I also liked Wage Douge and Fisher Quest from Lower Decks. Wage Douge, I just love the way the 3 plots on the Federation, Vulcan, and Klingon ships converge, and they're just so fun. And Fisher Quest was probably my favorite of the last season, although it's like hard to pick because there were some bangers, although it was definitely a mixed bag. But I liked the idea of alternate Boimler, or not alternate Boimler, William Boimler. Yeah, doing all of his little shenanigans, and alternate Mariner and their friendship and the way it transcends reality, and the themes of like trust and like it just gives me the warm and fuzzies. It's really good. But I will stop there because my list is basically just all of Star Trek.
Okay, and because we're kind of getting on in this, I do want to ask our 3rd out of 4 questions, but I ask that you just answer this one pretty quickly and like with like a 1 or 2 sentence answer after it. Starting with
Caves.
Scott.
I had to put caves in my list.
Okay, I know you love the caves.
I know.
We love caves, man.
What about mines?
So
Yeah, there's
Scott,
like so many.
favorite character and why? Go.
Lieutenant Commander Data. Because I know from experience being the kid that, kind of like looked like everybody else, but wasn't exactly like everybody else and said weird things sometimes. And it was difficult to fit in as a kid. And then you get this android who's all those same things, but is loved and accepted and like 3rd in command of the ship. Yeah, I'm going to back Commander Data every time.
Del favorite.
Oh, Moopsie. Easy.
Rock on.
Sorry, I was muted. It's going to be Captain Sisko and then followed by Captain Kirk.
All right. Big captains. Vanessa?
Tie between Garrick, because he's so multi-layered and there's just like an onion, just so much to find out. And then, of course, Bones. I just love how cranky he is. He is me on the inside. So.
Sure.
Snaking to me. I'll do, let's say, probably the Doctor from Voyager. Just, I like his character growth. I like, how he started somewhere and actually like got development, got to grow, got to play in similar themes that we saw Data have to confront, but like sort of in a different way. And I just think that, out of all of the Voyager characters, aside from the 7 of 9 show, he got probably the most dignified growth.
That goes perfectly into mine because mine's 7 of 9. I absolutely love her. I think she has so much character development and such an interesting backstory. Jerry Ryan is just a phenomenal actress. She displays so much range, and I just love her. I love her so much. Oh, and she's so funny. I feel like no one ever talks about how funny 7 is, but she has some of the funniest moments in Voyager. Like, she is the perfect straight man, and they utilize it so well. Like, hell yeah.
So my favorite growing up was Data, similar to Scott's reasons. I always felt like humans had really bizarre motives and I didn't understand their actions or behaviors. So I really understood Data. I was like, yeah, what are they doing? What is going on here? And then as a preteen, I was watching Voyager, which I fell in love with, and Janeway was just like the person and still is the person I want to be. She's not perfect, and that's what I love about her. She's strong and she's smart and she's dedicated, and the kind of loyalty that she inspires, I think is just beautiful. So those are my 2 faves.
Those were great, Shereese.
Thanks.
I do not necessarily have a favorite character that I want to mention. I have a favorite actress I want to mention, and that is Penny Johnson-Gerald. And even though Cassidy Yates isn't like my favorite character, I still think she's an excellent character, excellent addition to DS9 when she gets in there and can have some fun. And I also love that she is in an unofficial like Star Trek thing. It's not like actually a Star Trek thing, but I very much consider the Orville a continuation of like what makes Star Trek a good, interesting science fiction series when it's at its best. And the whole arc between her and Isaac, where she falls in love with this, sentient android, and she has to like navigate the fact that she has fallen in love with something that doesn't have emotions. Like that's just the best the Orville gets. She's got an amazing career. The Larry Sanders Show, she won several awards for being on that, and she's great in it. Just an amazing actress. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with two. I'm gonna go with Garrick because he is just such an enigma, and I love that as a character. He's an onion. He has so many goddamn layers. And second, I think I'd actually pick Trip Tucker. I love seeing the universe through the eyes of Florida Man in the early space flight of humanity. There's something genuine and beautiful about somebody that's like, all right, well, he knows his warp field theory, but he's not very good at anything else. And it's really interesting watching him go out into the galaxy and just do a thing. So yeah, Garrick and Trip Tucker. Okay.
As a Taylor, you're legally obligated to like Garrick.
Yes, I am. And with that, we're going to come around to the title question of this show. What does Star Trek mean to you? And I feel like the host of this whole goldarn thing, I got to start this one off. In one word, Star Trek means hope. And I think that's what it's been for most of us for most of the time that Star Trek's been on the air. It's a constant source of hope, and it's something to look forward to the future, and not even necessarily the distant future with the warp drive and the space travel and meeting new civilizations and having adventures, as much as it is the topics that Star Trek talks about. Then 20 or 30 years later, the problems might not be solved, but things have moved in a better direction because we've talked about them. And we've used this property of television to change people's minds and been one brick in the steps towards, demystifying different types of people and groups. And I think that's great. It's hope on a lot of levels. There's so much about Star Trek to like. It's been a pretty good TV show consistently for 60 years, ups and downs. And yeah, we're mostly riding off the hope here, though. Go ahead, Scott.
I do agree, but for slightly opposite reasons, because I do want that futuristic stuff. I want teleporters and replicators, maybe not so much phasers, all the cool futuristic stuff, including the space travel. I don't want the canon that it took to get there, because I don't think we need genetically engineered Superman or World War III. I had so much else more to say. Now I can't think of it. Oh, yeah, and the thing you said, you're talking about tackling these issues, and 20, 30 years later, we've made some progress. Yes, some. I wish I could say it was more, but, I've been watching my way through Voyager, and I just keep, realizing that these episodes, they keep hitting on themes that are relevant now. I just watched a 30-year-old episode that involves smuggling refugees, and I would love to be past that. And, of course, we're not. But you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, Star Trek is the hope for the future that we all want, because, they just make it look so good. Even when it's at its worst, they've got people striving to do the right thing, even more striving than Quantum Leap. And, the good guy always kind of seems to win in the end, unless it's like the end of Data's day and they let a spy get away. But for humanity.
I take it that's your end.
Yeah.
You are muted, Del. Or lagging.
No, I'm muted because I don't want to talk over other people. Star Trek for me is about escape. It's an escape that has so many different tunnels. It's got the TOS tunnel and the disco tunnel. And I go to those different tunnels for different kinds of escape. And they all have different themes and processes, and so I choose the one that I need to kind of stimulate my own brain. If I need, and I'm sorry to Voyager, I love Voyager, but that's like my, I don't want to think about it, escape. Whereas disco is more like the, I want to live in a world where we can just go pew, pew, pew and everything's fixed. And so for me, it's, and also escape in real life in that if I'm in the middle of an awkward conversation with another geek, I can bring up Star Trek as a language. And even if it's us fighting over Star Trek versus Star Wars, we still have a language. And so we have a way of escaping the social awkwardness that geeks face a lot by creating a language that only we share, so that when we talk to each other, like I've been talking to Dustin since the show has been on the air. Dustin and I have lots of things that we don't agree upon, but we agree, we base it all at the end about that Star Trek is awesome. And we can have that conversation whether or not he likes caves. So yeah, Star Trek to me is about escape.
Especially the Lower Decks episode Caves and Waltz from DS9.
Yes.
Yay, Caves.
I am
Go Caves.
I'm still allergic to bananas, and that's a precursor to an allergic to latex.
Oh. Gannon, what does it mean to you, sir?
Yeah, so Star Trek to me is my favorite TV show. I think it is one of the best TV shows of all time. I grew up with television, okay? There's a lot of things I really don't like about the streaming era. There's some things that I do, but Star Trek takes the best things about TV. They take the most popular television archetypes, you know, courtroom dramas, medical room dramas, and then like just having a captain steer an entire city in space. You know, it's just always appealed to me so much. I told you before, I got into Star Trek when I was 18. It's a transitional period in your life when you're 18. I needed a lot of guidance that I didn't necessarily was able to get from my guardians and adults in my life. So I really did look up to the Star Trek captains. Like, I loved Captain Kirk. I think that the fact that there's somebody on the ship, only one person gets to wear the 4 pips. Everybody looks up to them. They're like literally a celebrity. If you go down to the lower decks, the crew members there, the ensigns, are actually geeking out seeing the captain, you know, like once a month. And they're held up to such a standard, you know what I mean? Like the Starfleet code, being a captain, they're regular individuals who are kind of the peak of what is expected in a professional environment. And no matter what situation they're in, they're taught that nothing is impossible. Like, you could always get out of that situation and save your crew, whether you're dealing with a being that's a million years older than you. One of my favorite episodes is the Corbinite maneuver. I love that. You know what I mean? It was a test for Captain Kirk to be able to venture further out into the galaxy. Star Trek is just an amazing show. I can always go back and rewatch it. You know, when you opt in and you commit to an entire 7 seasons of Star Trek, it's almost like you're getting to know a family. You're invested in it. There's so many different types of episodes to appeal to everyone. And yeah, man, I love it so much. It's such a great show. It's impacted me positively. That's what Star Trek is to me.
Hell yeah. Vanessa.
For me, it is post-poverty, post-violence, post-struggle. That basic needs are met at bare minimum, and that thing is taken care of. And from there, your, bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy is fulfilled, and self-actualization is much simpler and much more straightforward. Like in DS9, you, for the first time, you see people realizing their destinies, and in a more like kids growing up kind of way. And it's something other than Starfleet with Jake, and he's like, I want to be a writer. And he just applied to a school and went, in here, there's like cost prohibitive things to consider. And like, gatekeeping with finances and connections. It's an actual meritocracy when you take care of everybody's basic needs, because there's no need for there to be an elite to piecemeal opportunities to people. Like, obviously in Star Trek, there's a bit of nepotism with the characters because, that's how you sort of create a world. They do the same thing in Star Wars where it's like my kid's in Starfleet, whatever. Anyways, like that's what it means to me. Like a future where everybody really is on the same playing field. And there's not like systems of oppression to sort of get in the way of that. So that's how I see it. And I without getting too negative here, I really hope that in future shows, Kurtzman Trek in particular, I really hope that they emphasize that a little bit more. Anyway, Bananas Foster and all that jazz.
Before I turn this over to Josh, that actually kind of that can tie into. So next week will be our final episode until Strange New Worlds comes out in July. We're going to take a break. We usually break into August, but the powers that be at Paramount have decided that we get to come back mid-July and talk to you about Strange New Worlds. But next week, speaking of not getting too negative, next week we may get very negative when we start talking about producers, and it's not actually Kurtzman we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, in general, the era of Rick Berman, and a few of the things that he did all right for the show, and quite a few of the ideas he had that may have been way past their prime even in the 90s. So, the Bermanification of Trek next week, right here on Buffer Time. But right now, Josh, tell us what Star Trek means to you.
Well, a man named Gene Roddenberry. No, basically,
a man loves a Star Trek.
When you have two nacelles that really love each other, I basically it's probably a synthesis of what a lot of the people have said here, but at the best of times, it's aspirational, not only in its own world, which, us looking towards a future that we want to achieve and us working towards that future socially, politically, but even the fact that it's led people to go out into the sciences and made them interested in something that's really tangible to the fabric of our current world in such a way that, watching another TV show probably would never lead you to something like that. To the arts as well, people out there have, probably gone into writing because of Star Trek. They've wanted to write scripts. They've wanted to get into acting. They've wanted to contribute all of these things simply from this TV show because of its grand scale and its all-encompassing effect on just every facet of life, and telling you that whatever it is you want to do, whoever you are, you can probably do that in this world out there if we can get to that point. When I was a kid, like I understood what TV was. I didn't think this was like a magical portal to the actual future, but kind of in my heart, I did feel like this is going to be us in 300 years if we can just get there. Like I would have moments where I just kind of daydream that I woke up in sick bay and Crusher was like, "Oh man, you had a disease for 300 years, but we cured you. So now you're just going to live on the Enterprise for a while." Sadly, that hasn't happened yet, but a man can dream. A man can dream about bananas.
That is a really great idea of what Star Trek is. I love your idea of just like wanting to wake up in the future. That is a beautiful daydream. But Ren, what does it mean to you?
Man, I love Star Trek, you guys. I think y'all have covered it really well, but I would also add, I think Star Trek to me means inclusivity. And I grew up in a very conservative area as a queer, neurodivergent little goblin, and I did not fit in. I did not fit in well. I had, a couple of friends, and everyone else like made it very clear that they could tell that I did not quite belong. And so I was a pretty lonely kid, and I was often pretty unsupervised. My mom worked a lot. My dad was sometimes gone for long periods because he was farming in Canada. And so I watched a lot of TV. We lived like 5 miles out of town, so I couldn't like go play with my friends. So the crew of the Enterprise a lot of the time were my friends. It was something that I could always like return to and feel safe and affirmed and like I belonged. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. And it presented, like such a hopeful vision for the future that really helped me through some tough times when things felt pretty hopeless. It meant a lot to me and still does. It's definitely one of my favorite shows and always will be. Oh my God, I'm like full on crying, you guys. It's ridiculous. But
You're not crying, I'm crying.
I'm actually crying, so.
Okay, well, let me save. Were you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, let me save you there and pop Shereese in, and let's find out what Star Trek means to her.
That was really beautiful, Ren, and it's totally okay to cry. It's okay to have feelings, which I did learn from Data. So one of my friends always defines science fiction as science made possible. And I just love that definition. And that's what Star Trek means to me. It's what is possible, not just the technology, which is super dope, right? Like transporters, replicators. I'm here for phasers, like all of this. Yes, let's bring all of it because we're going to have weapons. Let them be cool future weapons. But I think bigger than that, it stretches my thinking of what is possible in existence, right? So things like the crystalline entity or things like the Borg, just things that make me think about life a little bit differently. And I am a scientist. So when I see life forms like the crystalline entity, where I'm like, that is so nothing that could ever exist as an organic life form. But of course, it's an inorganic life form. It's just like, it's so interesting. And then it stretches my thinking of what could exist, which stretches my thinking of what I could do in the world. Even though I'm not planning on creating some cyborg species, it's just the fact that it's something so out of the regular everyday, so out of anything I've ever thought of or conceived of, that it's really exciting to remind me that there's so much more to be explored right here on Earth. We don't even need to leave. We don't even need to do space travel. There's so much on this planet that we have left unexplored, not just like physically, like going onto islands that have never had people on them, which I don't think any of those exist anymore, but just with emotions, with how our bodies work, with how our brains work, with how our minds work, with how emotions work, with how there's just so many things to explore. And it really excites the scientist in me. And that's what Star Trek is to me. It is a jumping off point for what all is possible in me and in my life, but also in society and in the world. Bingo.
Nice. Before I give you a shot, Robbie, I just want to say I'm almost 100% sure that we're in the mirror universe right now. We are planting the seeds of the Terran Empire. This is not just the pre-uprising of the Star Trek normal prime timeline where we go through World War III and then get our shit together. Nah, bro, we are going full Terran Empire. Whatever the salute is there.
I was gonna go with Sanctuary Cities, the episode with Sanctuary Cities. I think that's where we're headed right now.
If we do become the Terran Empire, I just hope we get the cool outfits that go with it. That's
Captain Killy, bro, all day, Captain Killy.
I'm gonna get the cool outfits no matter what.
Love it. She
can
can
really
for that.
My midget's
If I'm
not
going to
ready
be
for the
evil,
Terran
I'm
Empire.
going to be
I want that
sexy
green
too,
vest
like,
that Captain
no matter
Kirk was
what.
wearing. I'm gonna pop that shit on.
All right, Robbie, what does Star Trek mean to you, sir?
I think I've already explained a little bit about what Star Trek means to me in my previous answers, but I will say I think Star Trek might be the most satisfying media like empire of the 20th into the 21st century. It has so many things about that are groundbreaking to take in. when you're a younger person, you're trying to get into sci-fi, Star Trek is one of the most perfect examples you'll ever get of the tropes that define 20th century science fiction. There's it's got amazing character writing too. On top of that, on top of all your sci-fi jargon, you just get really brilliant characters like throughout all the series. I mean, even in the series I don't absolutely love, I still think you have amazing characters. Like I think Discovery has amazing characters when they have something to do with them. Like I don't I don't think the characters are ever the problem in any of these series. Like I actually think the setups for almost every Star Trek series are really well done. Just it's something that's also like really fantastic when you're growing up because you get so many varieties of science fiction adventure. Like you get the proto effects of TOS if you want, and like when you're growing up, when I did, I guess you really only had access to the first few series, up to DS9 and then the movies. But even then, that felt like a big blessing of a science fiction series. There weren't a lot of science fiction series I felt quite had the same amount of things you could get into at the time before we started getting into the Kelvinverse and the newer Alex Kurtzman treks. I mean, it's just a stunning achievement in human thought process. It's probably one of the things that has made me an ardent leftist as I've started getting older. I don't think my father anticipated what a needly little prick I was going to turn into about politics as I got older. But I don't know why he wouldn't, considering that he brainwashed me with Star Trek probably from the time I was a baby. So yeah, I can't talk highly enough about Star Trek, the influence it has on the world, the influence it has. Look, I'm not a scientist, but I understand the amount of influence it's had on the scientific community and how that's developed us into, as a society overall, into the 21st century. I mean, there's very few media properties of any kind that compare to it. And I know a lot of the things I've talked about are like niche elements about it and things that are more technical achievements than anything, but the complete integration of science into Trek as it became a maturing series of movies and television shows is itself a achievement in science fiction producing and television. There's so much. There's just too much that's good to talk about. And even the bad is usually interesting. If you have interesting bad stuff, then you're doing better than almost every other media property out there.
He's just spitting straight facts.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Code of Honor is at least interesting in some way, shape, or form.
I would even say Spock's brain is interesting, even though I fucking hate that thing.
It's got a great miniskirt. That's for sure.
No comment on that one.
Brain? What is brain?
I think this might be the most positive we have ever talked about Star Trek for an hour plus. And it has been an awful lot of fun. I want to specifically thank everybody that is here today because almost all of you have been here for quite a while. Vanessa, Scott, Del, Gannon, Shereese, Josh, Ren, and Robbie, who's been here longer than anyone. I would like to thank you guys for coming here week after week, even when it's not all the time. I appreciate any amount of time that you guys give up. And especially today, this has been a lot of fun to talk about Star Trek.
I don't have my camera on, but I got a Vulcan salute going.
Heck yeah. And I'd like to thank all of you. This is like some of the most people we've ever had watching us all at one time and for a long time. Apparently you guys like our outpouring of emotions more than us just bantering about random things in Star Trek.
I can cry more, like...
So here's to another 100 episodes, at least another 2.5, 5, I don't know. We'll be here till we're 50 or so. Some of us already are. But until next week, when we talk about the Burmanification of Trek, it's been a real pleasure, and